it's Shapes, and welcome to another edition of AniTube Digest, where we go over the best and not so best anime YouTube videos to come out this month of December 2022. I miss saying come out this week too. I miss it too. And I've definitely noticed that doing it monthly means I'm very, very rusty. It also doesn't help that I was a fool and watched the majority of these videos like 3 days ago or something. And here I am, delaying, just didn't record, and just, of course, so bad. So if I don't have much to say about the video, I apologize. I'd be rusty. I forgot the video, and also not great at doing it. I'm very self-deprecating lately, so don't mind me. I'm going to start with the Keksi video. He put out a couple of videos this month. It was just a surprising burst of ideas, and I was very jealous and enjoyed seeing that. Even though I didn't watch all of them, it was just like, yeah, that activity is just like, wow, that's awesome, you know? But Keksi's the problem with new anime is something that I checked out, and I think I latched on to the idea a bit better. I think I watched one other video of his, but I don't remember. This one was interesting because the problem that he was finding was in the voice recording, that the audio technology has gotten so good in anime that the voices are so crystal clear that it just doesn't jive with what the visuals that are happening on screen. It's just like too clean, where like there's no ambient noise. There's it doesn't make sense that like characters are talking so clearly to each other like they're on a podcast when they're outside with like a storm happening. And it's like, you know what? That makes a lot of sense. I agree with that. Two things that I was thinking about with this idea. First is that like perhaps a reason that it's like this is maybe perhaps Japanese is kind of in such a way that like the language is such a way that like you really need that clarity. You really need to like hear every bit of dialogue that they're saying, and so that is really important. Although it doesn't quite translate fully, because there's some anime that like, especially the way that some series audio has not been preserved very well, and yet it's still kind of fine, you know. like people can still kind of understand it and whatever. There could be something to that though, where it's like the clarity is been placed more of a priority lately, to where like this is obviously a mixing thing, because like you can have really great audio and stuff, and then it's just layer the actual stuff in. And like you said, I think where it's like, I don't know who to blame for this, so it's probably the sound director, the person ideally mixing the music and the ambience and the voices all together and making it you know, that sort of thing. That's probably a creative choice and something that seems very widespread, like an industry standard almost, where maybe that it really is just like the dialogue is placed much more firmly, where you really need them to hear it for such and such reasons. I'm not sure, like some closed captioning or what. I'm not actually sure. It might be a TV standard though, something to consider, I guess. The other thing I was kind of feel like I was missing from this video is that like, oh, probably the anime these days, it's like this, when you don't really give a contrast of what it was like before. And I'm not asking for a date or a particular show, that the reason this all whatever, but it just felt like back in my day type of thing without giving any specifics, I guess, where it's like I do agree with you. I think there's something different, something substantial to the claim here, that like it's something you can't unhear now. So it's like, yeah, all anime does seem like this, but then I don't know, give one example, anything from like the 90s or even 2000s or something, where like it's not like this. I'm not asking for a timeline or anything super extensive, just maybe even just one thing where it's like you give that contrast of more of what you would hope to see out of that doesn't bother you, you know? I don't know, just a consideration. But I really like the idea and ruminating on this. And I also like just the visual presentation, just kind of stuff in general. It's just very general footage. Is not focusing on, it's not targeting a particular show, but it just felt very, and also felt very current, like it's you know, the episodes that are coming out this season type of thing. Yeah, I don't know, there's just things that like made sense, and it's a good visual in that way. Yeah, I like the video. PhenomSage also had a Bocchi the Rock cover Although yeah, Keksi's wasn't really necessarily targeted at Bochi. But then yeah. Anyway, this is actually about Bochi the Rock doing very well for himself with this video. It seemed very popping off good, and I was interested in clicking on this. You know, I watched Bochi this season. I liked it, but it wasn't something that, like, when I watch other people's videos, a lot of people were making Bochi videos, I think, and not a lot of them were really like sticking with me, or I'm not like closely connected with what's being talked about, I guess, because I'm only like the show just fine, I suppose. And so Phenom, for the most part, he's talking about how good Bochi is as an anime. At least that was how it was coming off to me. So a lot of it, especially because I only watched it a couple of days ago, it didn't stick with me as much, or it just kind of felt more of a general Bochi video, which is fine. It's actually very good. It's totally cool. It's just that what incentivized me to click on the video was this idea of comparing it to the manga, which was a perspective I had not heard much of. I hadn't heard anyone talk about the manga at all until this anime got announced. And so, you know, hearing that was a yonkama, and yeah, I don't know. It's just, there's things about it I was like, oh, that's interesting. And I kind of wished there was more of that. I like the presentation of the four koma that you had, where it was in different angles and presented in such a way that was interesting, I guess. But I just felt like I didn't get enough of it, enough of an idea of what the yonkoma is like, and really, and I'm not looking for a very major drastic comparison or something. I don't know. It just felt lacking in that way, and I'm not give specifics like I was missing this is nothing like that. I just felt there was more focus on Bochi's exceptional qualities as an anime, which is perfectly fine to talk about, versus like the title being the absurd adaptation of it. I felt like you had the one example, which is that one of like Bochi writing a song, and the anime ends up showing her in three different. I'm the master of this thing, and then she's showing like three different, and all them different kind of art styles and stuff. Like, that's a good example. And that was kind of the only one. At least it seemed that way to me. Or I guess there is only so much you can say in that regard, because it seems, at least from what the impression I was getting from your video, that the yonkoma is actually very plain, and but I guess I don't know. I think you had it with like, there's a staffman on here, I don't remember who's an animation director or what, that was like, please, someone, God, let me know when this is getting an anime. I want to be on it because I'm such a big fan of this manga. So I guess I would have wanted more of that, of like, what is about the manga that makes it so interesting and appealing? Because obviously the anime is popping the F off, so it's like, interesting. I don't know. I guess there's a little lack of that for me personally, but otherwise I like the video. Yeah, it's good. I don't know if I've talked about this channel, Music in Anime. Chainsaw Man composer Kensuke Ushio. One thing I will say is that what got me to click on the video was that Kensuke Ushio's actual face is on it, and it made me think, that composed with the title made me think this was like an interview, or just had something with his quotes in it or something. But no, it's the creators, it's just creators video, and he has a very good setup, and he's been doing this for a while, so I think he has very good camera presence, and like, he's very practiced and knows his stuff, it seems. But it's just him kind of talking about Ushio's discography in general, even though he literally, the two that I'm very interested in, like from him, Liz and the Bluebird and Heike Monogatari, are both like, oh, he also did these things. So it's like, no, it's fine. I'm not looking for a holistic, I wasn't expecting that or anything. I don't know what I was expecting, because what I would say is that, like, I was clicked on it because of that, but I think it was misled in that way, and not, my own personal whatever. But then just like composer Kensuke Ushio, what about him? Like, the title just feels very general, I guess. I don't know, but it's fine. I like the video though, because again, I really think he has a good screen presence, and I like what he's talking about. I like when when he's at his piano and he's describing certain tracks, and he's like, oh, like this sort of thing. It's information that doesn't, I'm not fully versed in that way, and not like, oh, I would know. So it's hard for me to give like specifics in that way. And again, I've also didn't watch it for a couple of days ago. But I did enjoy the video though. I would just say that it was just like, it felt like it's weird packaging almost. But I really, yeah, him talking about Kensuke in general is just great. Oh, also just there was one moment where he where he's like summarizing this really cool, like he was at the back of a vinyl or something, and there was a whole article about him where they're just describing his life, and he's like, I'm gonna summarize it here, but then I'm gonna put the full thing on screen. And then the video captions sort of like, nah, I didn't do that. And I'm like, dang. It's hard to see that when it's just baiting the audience almost. And it's not the worst deal, obviously. I appreciate he went out and summarized it at all. But that was a bit disappointing, I guess. And it's sort of just like, could find a way to make that work. I don't know. Not a big deal, though. But yeah, it sounded like I have more complaints than and I'm hand waving the good parts, but it's because the good parts just kind of wash over, and it says, yeah, it's good. So I apologize for that, but I did really enjoy the video. You see, I'm just very repetitive. I just say that I like the video, and then just that's it. I don't know. It used to be, yeah, whatever. Gotta stop doing that. I think this is also the first time I'm talking about this creator, Booba T, the best CGI you've never seen, and it's referring to Love Live. Particularly the later seasons, because it's like, oh, the first seasons were kind of ass with the CG. And he's trying to give a alternate perspective for CG and everything. And I do like that he referenced Mother's Basement's CG video recently a little bit. But it has pretty good research behind it. It seems that, they seem very well informed about this series. It's a big franchise and everything. And it does have that vibe. I feel like I've seen this in other Love Live related videos, or videos kind of in this vein, where it's like the creator very much is into it, and it's a tidal wave of information and like culture and fans. It's the whole thing this is an entire franchise you've never seen, let alone the focus on CG itself. I was getting that impression, at least. And what I would say, it's like similar to the other video from last month that I don't remember the creator's name, but I had problems where, and this is I don't remember if there was another video that was like this. It might have been, but like, I'm annoyed that you really can just put sources in the video and not in the description, and not like link them, and not even on screen. Like, you'll put like the quote or the source thing on the screen, right? And I guess if you really, really wanted to, you could like reverse Google search it, and you could find the source, like, sure. But like, the way it's being presented so flashily and kind of blink and you miss it. And in Booba T's case, I want to be honest and be like, it's kind of sloppy. There's a lot of video edits in here that are just very chaotic and don't really know where to put things, and it's immersion breaking for me personally. I just can't help but to be distracted by a lot of these things and a lot of repetitive uses of certain shots and everything. And I don't know, it's a chaotic video, and not in a way that's like a roller coaster kind of fun kind of way. It's sort of just like a little messy. It's messy. And I wish I could give you like specific points. I only watched through it once, again, a couple days ago. And, it's just me having I could have the hyper focus on a lot of these different things, but it's just sort of for stuff. But yeah, I think it was an informative video for sure. But it seems interesting, and I think you have really good points about what makes effective CG in these particular cases. And I'm happy it's getting a broad audience. That's pretty cool. It's just sort of just like in places. It didn't infuriate me. I like that other video. But yeah, I think there could be improvements in places. Just having things that finding things that are like a very predictable, reliable clarity. There's a lot of clarity things, but it kind of whooshes past you in a way. I don't know. It's stuff to consider, I guess. Gigguk had kind of an interesting, spicy video. The manga was better, and he had the exact same point I had made in my Naruto video that hasn't come out yet. That's literally same fucking points. God damn it, annoying. But this, I think he's speaking to the choir a lot of things, and I think people could be a bit cynical of like, yeah, no shit, or whatever, or like, not adding anything of substance or anything, but I think it's good someone having this platform at least speaking these certain terms, and it's like, yeah, this is actually good. The in particular, you know, talking about Naruto's filler, and being very dismissive of most of it, but then at least giving that point of like this scene of episode 82, this is all not in the manga, and that's anime. It's technically filler, but it's good. Yep, yeah, it is. Yeah, I don't know. And just like there's some generalizations and points. It just feels very overarching in that way, I guess. But I like the points that he's making in general. And he's talking about adaptation processes and you know, like that. A lot of it's just like, yep, yeah, like nodding my head to it, and I think it's edited pretty sharply, and yeah, I enjoyed the video a lot. Yeah, I think it was a pretty good points being made there. I may have had some reservations in places, but I don't remember. Sorry. What magical girl games are on the SNES from Magical? This is a part one because there's other SNES games, but it's all Sailor Moon. There's a lot of Sailor Moon SNES games. So Magical just focused on the other ones that are not Sailor Moon. And I think that was really interesting. I liked the format. It's very comfy. The selections were interesting. And I liked Magical talking about them. I think at one point I think I actually commented it. And then after I posted the effing comment, I saw that they actually do seem to do some kind of recording of theirs, like their reactions of stuff. And it's like, oh, I would really like that, some of the more playthrough stuff. But yeah, I like this sort of thing, even though it's, you know, I'm not much of a retro gamer myself or anything. Yeah, I think it was really good. Although it is a shame that the Mahojin Guru game seems to be so bad, because I really like that show, if you didn't know. I really enjoy that Mahojin Guru. So it's a shame that it didn't kind of ends up so poorly, especially because it's less of a magical girl series and more so a parody on Dragon Quest and JRPGs. So you'd think it would be a little better in the JRPG department, but I guess not. Oh well. But yeah, Anime Man had a decent video with becoming a real Japanese teacher for a day, kind of taking some more approaches, like some cues from Connor, I think. At least it felt that way, where it's like, here's my experience with this place, and here's some narration over it, and here's what we're going to do in this video, and then, you know, it's an experiential type of thing. But I like pretty much the vast majority is the actual lesson that's just kind of filmed and not prepared, or like, just some preparation. Obviously, he has an idea of what he wants to teach and say, but he really takes a lot of the bulk of it ends up coming from getting questions and answering them, and workshopping stuff and ideas with the students there. And it was all in English. And I don't know, I think, and then having kind of fly on the wall perspective, or just two cameras, one focusing on the students, one on him, and then one is like a background type of thing, but leaving a lot of stuff in, it seems, while still feeling fairly succinct, I guess. I think it was a really smart and interesting video, and, you know, him talking mainly about kanji. It was about you know, it was an English speaking class of teaching about Japanese and kanji specifically, and certain things that they have problems with and confusions about, and him talking things through. And he studied this stuff for a long time, and I think he gives very good advice, especially towards the end, where it's like, you know, don't think you just got Japanese. It's a learning process. Even a lot of, you know, native Japanese speakers are still learning Japanese and are still taking these like efficiency courses to like how good they are at the language, because it's just ever evolving, incredibly complicated. The ceiling is like nowhere to be fucking found, that sort of thing. So it's like the best advice is kind of like just practice it and just the best way to speak, you know, practice speaking Japanese is to actually speak Japanese, you know, and really use it in real conversations and stuff. Yeah, and I just thought it was really interesting, and him putting himself out there. Again, I like that sort of thing from any YouTube creator, that sort of experiential type of thing. Yeah, it's good. That was really nice. I wanted to shout out Toadette, who finished their Moomin series of Shin Moomin. They uploaded, I counted, about 33 of the 52 episodes with subtitles. They've subbed more than half the show through this project. And this project, it wasn't just subbing it. Every single episode that they uploaded, but then they did this for every episode. They only uploaded the ones that they were actually good and think they were worth sharing. So, you know, like, I like that there was a curation process. Every episode that they uploaded was like something that really actually worth your time to check out, worth subbing almost. And but even better, obviously, crediting all the episodes. And again, each episode, there was a thread on their Twitter where they evaluate it, they give it a rating and a description and kind of talking it through, even kind of going through the whole plot, basically, sharing some clips and stuff. Not really meticulous in so many places, but really like giving a thorough analysis of every episode, you know, and that was unbelievable. But especially for a series, you don't have to do this for fucking Evangelion. you really don't, you know, because that's, people know that one, right? And they can watch it for themselves. This series had nobody championing it. I've probably mentioned this multiple times when talking about this whole project, obviously, because I've mentioned it multiple times on Digest. But New Moomin, if you're not familiar, there are 3 adaptations of... There's technically 4 anime series, actually, of Moomin. And that's a series originally based on some children Finnish books. Well, yeah, Swedish. The author is Finnish, lives in Sweden. It's a series of novels, comics, huge franchise, very European thing that like Americans probably don't know next to nothing about, but in Europe, basically everywhere else, huge, massive franchise. And it gets anime in 1969, and it's not very faithful. It's got some guns and tanks in it. Otsuka's on it. Yasuo Otsuka worked on it, I'm pretty sure. And then in 1972 is Shin Moomin, which is this series that Toadette evaluated and looked all of. And that one is also not very faithful. The designs are very different. Snufkin looks very different than his canon appearance. There's a lot of there's things that are the same and there's things that are not, you know, and a lot of it is also very mean-spirited. And there's a lot of different... It's weird. It's a weird series. But it's directed by Rintaro. It's got at least one episode directed by Osamu Dezaki. It's got a lot of really talented staff on it. A lot of, you know, names you've never heard of, obviously, but it's just like, it's really interesting. And when you actually give it the chance and evaluate it, you know, parsing, there's like Golden Age, there's a certain Golden and Silver Age, there's stints of episodes that are amazing, and then there's a span of episodes that are not good. You know, there's actual interesting variation and variety here. And these last 2 episodes, actually, this is the last episode I'm putting on Digest, but I also watched I Hate You, Snufkin. Very riveting episodes, and Toadette rates them very highly, and they're going to be releasing their big actual article about it, hopefully next month, which I'm very excited to read, and you probably won't see it on Digest, of course. It's not really a video. But this was unbelievably interesting and valuable, because it's completely changing the impressions that people have had for years, decades, about the series. They know next to nothing, but what little they know is like, oh, dismissive. Like, you look on the Moomin Wiki, they're not on here. These episodes, these designs of Stinky or Snufkin or any of these characters are not even considered. Because, yeah, the author doesn't approve of them. It was not following their vision pretty much at all. They're not very faithful adaptations. For them, you know, you could look into it. Maybe there's some threads here or there. But compared to Tanashi Muminika, which has the actual author's oversight, or her son's oversight, and was the one that was localized in English and in many other languages, and that is the true animated like adaptation, and that's a very good looking adaptation, and it's very faithful, and it's kind of the, you know, quote unquote best one. But this was so interesting to get like a fresh, fair perspective on something that's neglected like that, on art that's being neglected in this way, that's just kind of dismissed. I don't really like a lot of anime that's being dismissed just for the sake of it. I do it all the time. So I'm not, I'm not fallible. I'm not infallible to this, but it's just there's so much passion and work and magical things that happen in these shows. If you take time to appreciate them, and you of course get access to them, and the fact that Toadette had purchased these VHSs, ripped them and subbed more than half the show and kind of spared you from the the ones that aren't very good, and actually going through that. I would love to do something like that with another show, with a lot of other rare, like, raw anime. I'll be watching a number of them actually this next year, not unrelated to Toadette, but yeah, it just makes it really interesting, and yeah, love it. Very much congratulations on this project, and please give it some attention and check it out. I think they're really, really impressive episodes and really great work. Animator Dormitory channel did something a little different. They uploaded a TV investigation documentary type of thing, inside the anime industry, corrupt working conditions. And you can tell that this was made somewhere in 2016, 2017, just based on the titles that they're showing, development of certain things. Like, they kind of interview Science Saru and Lou Over the Wall as kind of examples of an alternate, perhaps better working conditions. And, like, I haven't looked into it, but I remember when Heike Monogatari was coming out, people were worried because it had been revealed that Science Saru does not have very good working conditions, or something about their studio was not as forward-thinking as, say, Kyoto Animation, which Kyoto Animation I don't believe is mentioned in this documentary either. But the other one that they were saying is like, oh, this could be a good alternate, is I think it was Polygon that did Blam. So that one of these, Blam is one of the movies that they're like, hey, this is CG and it's less, less intensive or whatever, and you can make it potentially in a way that, like, compensates the and treats the workers with better conditions. And they were giving those examples, I guess. Yeah, and so it's subbed, and it was interesting to see that, especially from that period. It's not something super cutting edge, like recent or anything. If any, you'd probably say that the problems are getting worse or just more exasperated now, with just how many are coming out, the sheer volume, and the level of quality that is being expected, given certain other productions, and fans kind of having those expectations and not being met in certain places. It's like some of the anime coming out this past year and even this season is unbelievable in terms of the quality, and it's exciting, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's healthy, and it really makes you wonder. It really makes you worried, I think. But it's something to it's hard to care, because it's easy to care, but like you can't do anything about it. There's nothing we can do to stop it besides just like not watch it. But that's not going to happen. Most people aren't going to just stop watching, and it's something the government probably has to get involved at this point. I think in this documentary they were saying like there's certain labor groups that are starting to get involved, but that was back in 2016-17, and the problem persists. Don't know. I don't know what this leads to, and I hope it's not death. That's the only thing I don't want. If it leads to collapse and certain, it would suck with people losing their jobs. That would be awful. But maybe at least that would have them reconsider and try something different, a little more sustainable. It maybe it leads to a change. That would be what I would hope for. I would hate that people lose their jobs, but I would rather people I'd rather people lose their jobs than lose their lives, right? Is that weird? Is that I don't know. Is that too hot? I don't. Look, yeah. So yeah, I'm just hoping for the best. But this is just a kind of a reminder, especially the fact that it's very clearly from that year. That it's just, and then seeing that like Science Saru is supposed to be seen as like one of the better examples. and I've not heard the same recently. So that's really hard. That's really discouraging. So it's, but yet nonetheless interesting. So yeah, BobSamurai finally got this monster out. Oh my god, Astro Boy Beginner's Guide, the underappreciated legend. And I'm shocked that like every adaptation seems to be worth watching. Damn, there's like an order. There does seem to be kind of like really leaning on 1980 pretty much, because 03, at least to his knowledge, wasn't subbed, but it was subbed, and it's a pinned comment. I get it. Glass Reflection literally just had that today, actually. Apparently, he mentioned in his 2022 video that like Kaguya, this is it. There's no more Kaguya. That was his presumption, but it really did just get announced like a couple very recently that no, there's a movie coming out that's adapting more of the story, and they're not done per se. So he's like, damn it, do I just take the fucking video down, or I pin the comment? It sucks. And so he had a similar thing happen to him with you, Bob, where after you uploaded this video, when talking about like there's really no good subbed version of Astro Boy 03 at the moment, because it's all gibberish subs, like not great subs. And turns out there is a fan project that is fully subbed. Great. You know. So that kind of alters things a little. But yeah, I like that you talked about Pluto, and it made sense. You were like very curt with the Astro Boy movie and out of the beginning. Made sense. But I really liked your the way you were comparing 03, 80, and 63 with the certain arcs, the certain ideas and themes, and then a moment-to-moment experience with them. It's like, I like this over here. It felt a lot like the Gigguk video, which is, it's like this, and you're in that one as well. Brave stuff. Just everything you did this year, I think, like pound for pound, you're definitely the best one this year for me. For like anime YouTubers. I'm not going to be doing like an end of year thing like I've done the past couple of years, because this is already like a monthly thing, and I don't have the time or the energy or motivation really. But I would say pound for pound, like the amount of value that you've brought this year has been so valuable, and I hope that it hasn't burnt you out too much with like how long this particular video took to make. And I'm sure you're kind of adjusting certain things in places. I don't know. Not that you do whatever, you know, right? But I would say that like I've really liked your output the most, I would say. It's been really great. Yeah, loved it. It's awesome. Hayden Loves Anime comes out with The Untold Story of Mr. Gimmick. I had never heard of Mr. Gimmick. It's a video game, it seems. And I gotta hand it to Hayden, man. They get it. They're kind of holding the mantle that I'm pretty much putting down, or I'm gonna like dial back dramatically, but it's like just the will and investment. Like apparently this is like over $1,000 put into this video, based with the amount of art made, interviews, materials, how thorough this is. Man, this is unreal. I would say it's hard because there was a lot of really good videos this month, including STEVEM's, on a video, obviously. Hard competition, but man, like, this was wonderful. It's so lovely seeing a video from you. I always love your aesthetics. I love your creative choices with transitions and choice of visuals. There's so much love and care put into every goddamn second of this video. It's wonderful. There was something I wanted to. Would say that like the side part describing was it Trip, the kind of game on the Game Boy, that was like a different game altogether. I didn't know how much that needed to be in there. I'm sure there's the perfect reasons for it and everything. I guess as an audience member, I was like, oh yeah, cool. And then it kind of kept going for like another 10 minutes or 5. I don't remember. And I was like, okay, yeah. I'm still liking the video fair amount. But it just, I think that the portions where you're talking about the composer and bringing in the difficulty of the game of Mr. Gimmick and where it brought in, and I like the Game Center segment as well. There's things about it that was just like flowed really well. So much good, like, again, a lot of creativity in the art, in the way you're filming things, in the aesthetics, in just the transitions, and you're so obvious. Like, I think I may have said it with your cat soup video as well, where there's so much incredible ingenuity and creativity, and love your stuff. Like, oh my god. But again, it's like I admire the shit out of it, just being able to like really believe in a project and work on it for this long, you know, and head to grindstone and really like put all that labor of love in. It's getting harder and harder for me, I think, to do that. So it's just really encouraging to see someone continue that. And I want you to get more success, frankly. I know it's hard to, that's the thing, is just like, yeah, I would want the best for you and for these videos that are just some of the best stuff I've seen. It's from any YouTuber, you know. Yeah, it's really, really great stuff. Hazel is back with a look inside the war on Pokemon, as well as Lucky Star is back, and both videos. I first, obviously, I have this thing with Hazel for whatever reason that's like just this kind of. Actually, she was back in a capacity with Tokyo Pop. I forgot about that vid, but like within a week of each other, 44-minute video, 31-minute video. God damn it, you know. And both do very well, but both of them were very similar in structure, or just in type, where the focus of this video was on two literal books about anti-Pokemon sentiment. It wasn't just sort of perusing online and making fun of that priest guy. That priest guy, like, I knew about him. I didn't know he wrote a fucking book. And then reading it, and so it was interesting for me, for someone who is also going to make a video about a book. But you know, the book is a little bigger, a little denser, just a little. So I have to be a little different, but I like the approach here, where it was a lot of supplementary visuals, but then like physically have the camera here and like showing the book. That was really good. That was really smart. And the commentary on it and the approach to it, and the kind of semi-sympathetic but then not sympathetic in places. I think just having the two books was I think that honestly, if it was just the first book as the one video, I feel like that as a beginning to end piece would have worked really, really well, and that would have made sense. But again, I think Hazel has that thing I feel like I've talked about it in other videos of hers, where she kind of just wants to pack a lot of other stuff in. So like, I have this other book, and then she kind of talks for a little bit longer about, like, after the two books. You know, there's not much in the way of succinctness to her vids, and like, you know, so it's impressive to me as a creator when I see 44-minute video, like, oh, that's a lot of work, and then a lot of it's just kind of packed in with stuff, you know, and I'm not gonna lie, I kind of have the similar thing with my Naruto video, I feel, where it's like, it's just packed with stuff. And it's like, yeah, I guess it's impressive that's an hour. It doesn't feel like an hour and a half, because it's just kind of goes, you know, with a lot of tangents and just writes and stream of consciousness, and okay, you know. But yeah, so that's what I mean, where it's like anybody can make a fucking big video, and I'm no exception. I'm fucking nobody in that regard. Anyway, but I've watched a chunk of the Lucky Star video, where it's similar to going into a particular magazine that this new installment of Lucky Star came out of, and looking at, you know, the quality of the print and looking through all that stuff. And, you know, I like the thoroughness in places, but it doesn't like hold my attention in the same way. Again, I think Hazel's biggest strength here is just her effortless charisma and delivery, and just ease of just watching, and the humor, and just as a personality, and the thing and her perspective and the things that she cares about is the stuff that is so attractive and like makes you really want to watch all of her videos in that way and not miss an upload from her, no matter what it is. No matter what it is, that sort of thing. It's like such a sweet spot for a creator, and why she's doing so well, I think. At least it seems that way. But, you know, has her own difficulties and like things that she's wrestling with and everything. I think every creator has that, no matter how much it looks like they're doing well or anything. They have their own issues, and they can never complain about them. No, I don't like that. You know, I think they should be able to complain about it. I think it's okay if they don't think it's good enough, or it's not enough, or whatever. I think it's okay to, you know. I'm just saying that because I would like that. Anyway, yeah. Bonsai Pop started their giant-sized Yu Yu Hakusho review, part 1, the beginning. And man, look, I like Yu Yu Hakusho a lot. So it was, and I like Bonsai Pop stuff a lot. So it was effortless to watch this stuff, but it was also like, I'm seeing them do the same thing I'm doing with this big Naruto video and everything. I'm just like, here we are, you know, and it's like this need that we're putting so much goddamn stuff into this. It needs to effing work, you know? So it's like, you know, I'm hoping the best for them, really, because you know, I've been there. God, I've been there. I liked Mike's perspective on talking about this as a favorite. Like, when this is your favorite for so long, you talk about it differently, and there's the weird things about it. It's like, how do you say certain things, and it's harder to write. And that's why I've thought about making this big effing Ashino Joe video or whatever, and then not doing it, you know, because then it's just like, how do you even fucking where do you start, sort of thing. So I get it. But I think it was really a cool perspective, and it was kind of what I was also expecting a little bit. There's not too many in the ways of like new discovery and new surprises, I guess. It feels like they've made this sort of not this directly, but it's a lot of similar material being covered thematically of Togashi's health and being a creator, and it's like, this isn't quite what I want to be making, or things aren't quite what I want them to be, or success, the idea, the ruminations of that, tying that with Mike and Tyler's own personal experiences with making with YouTube and being a creator, which I really like. I'm a big fan of that. Yeah, it's good to see. I just wanted to call attention, call it out as well, because it's I feel very despite us having very different backgrounds, I'd say I like to think there's a kinship there, and I appreciate our whatever mutuality we have, friendship. I don't use friendship that lightly. I try not to use that. I try to use that term sparingly, but I also don't talk to them that often and everything. But yeah, it's just wanted to shout it out as a start of this big project. Best of luck with it. I enjoyed this first part. I really do desperately need to rewatch Yu Yu Hakusho. It's been way too long, and yeah, I really like the perspective here. It was really good. I don't think I've talked about AnimeArchaeology in a long time. They've kind of been doing their own thing, and this particular one I was especially interested in because it's Star of the Giants just happens to be on my mind, even though I have the whole series downloaded and I haven't watched it yet. It's like a commitment, and not sure if I want to. Anyway, thoughts. But they watched the first episode that was subbed a while ago, and it's similar in the vein that they've done this for Astro Boy episodes, Sally the Witch, a lot of these early shows they've been doing this with. And it's not just, I'm so sorry I don't know any of their names, but it's not just the main guy that's like the one on the banner there, and he was on the thumbnails for a very long time. As of a couple months ago, it really seems he's found two kindred spirits. Both of them are kind of on the older side, which is always a perspective you never get because we're all fucking teenagers in comparison. And it's always a perspective I really enjoy and appreciate. Though I haven't really been following their stuff all that closely. And they've been doing a lot more anime news and a lot of kind of podcast format, and things like that, and a lot of older stuff, and going around. But yeah, as of like a couple months ago, they were like, let's dig kind of deeper into a particular episode of something, and kind of scrolling through it after having watched it. Basically, they just put out an episode 1 of Gatchaman as well. But just kind of talking, seeing and discussing that. I really liked this format, actually. It's the three of them on the side in this podcast form on camera, and talking about their experience with this episode, maybe scrolling through a little bit. So that was a crazy, weird part. Like, oh my gosh. And, not like analyzing it in that particular sense, but, talking about their experiences with it, and a little history and stuff here and there. But, not psychoanalyzing it too much. I think the format was really digestible and interesting. And they're pretty easy to listen to. I think as a conversation, it doesn't feel so regimented. And it's a fresher perspective. I really like this, actually. I kind of wish they did more. It does clearly seem that they're not really going to go into the raw stuff, which is fair, I guess. But yeah, I mean, I was really interested in their perspective on it, and I liked this installment a lot. It's like. It's just too bad that they're gonna kind of move on to they're just gonna hop around a lot to a lot of different series and stuff. But I guess that's the format. AMP started doing this thing a couple months ago, actually, with their first test of this was Chainsaw Man, covering episode 1. But this month it was the one that I noticed, because I had seen Shabu's face that, like, I didn't know was Shabu. I don't think Shabu would ever done that kind of face reveal. At least in my experience. Yeah, he did. But you know what? He did. And then he didn't look the same, I guess, in the time since then. I didn't recognize him, I guess. So it just caught my eye. And I'm like, oh, yeah, it's AMP. And it's the two of them. I think that I'll also say, just by hovering over the videos and seeing kind of a sample of the footage and stuff, I can tell that they've polished the format a little bit, too, where Core has a similar angle to Shabu now. And it's more of like the two of them taking up the whole screen, and just the episode in little dividers, and expands out a little bit in places. But really going through the whole episode, talking about not really just the OST, but just the actual sound design of the whole thing, and talk about the music editing. Shabu has done this is professional composer, and has edited music for 2 shows, basically. And so telling them some tricks of the trade and stuff, which was really interesting. And kind of going through all of it, was like, oh, there's a pause and there's no music here, and analyzing that choice, and I think that was so fascinating. I would say it was tough, where it was a little tough for me to follow as a viewer, only for 2 reasons. I'm not nearly as elevated as in knowledge of music and stuff as Core and Shabu are here. So a lot of the concepts they're talking about and the things they're referencing, and techniques, etc., was just like, oh, yeah. They're not really like doing this for the layman. They're really just kind of doing this for I think they're kind of bouncing off each other in that elevated sense, and it's enjoyable, and it's an interesting experience. But they're doing a little bit of explanation, like kind of a baseline thing, but like there's not a lot of preparation in that way of like really explain each of these core concepts. It's not a reaction, like they framed this like the way YouTube does, right, with the composer breaks down the magic OST, but they don't do the thing that all those other videos do, which I like. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying this is a flaw. I like this, but like whenever you have a video like this, usually what seems like is that they haven't really reacted to they're not reacting to this fresh. Well, look, they didn't react to this fresh either, but I think there was something where like they when, like, say Dr. Mike or Legal Eagle does an episode of something, I think what they do is they look through the whole episode and they're picking out specific topics and specific scenes, and like, what is the core thing we're going to explain to the audience in a way that's like, if you don't know, and I think there is that, but there's not as much of a emphasis on that. I think it's the emphasis is more on the conversation that Shabu and Core have, and it's a lot more like, I don't know, it's polished, but it's not in a way that's like super bite sized. It's also like podcast length, right? Which I like the thoroughness of it. I like that they don't really seem to skip anything. They don't like only get the most interesting parts, which these other reaction videos do. I like that it's very thorough, kind of going minute by minute almost. The other thing that made it not so easy to follow for me was just that I didn't quite have an idea of how long or how much in the episode there was, nor of like how long each thing would take. Not like you need to regiment any of that. I'm not saying that. Like, God, that would be awful. But just, I guess something like, if I as an audience member knew how much in the episode we were at, like a time code in the episode, or just like a bar for the episode itself that's like separate from the YouTube bar, because your discussion of each scene is going to vary, which is fine, which is good, because you have that freedom and flexibility for that. And so the viewer knows how much the video is left of your discussion of it. But I guess what could have made it a little more orienting, for me at least, and this could be kind of whatever, but if you had like the episode time code itself, you have some bar or something, and you know kind of at what point in the episode we're at, again, that it's sort of like time codes in a YouTube video, where you get an idea of like, this is this section, this is how long it's going to be, and it breaks it down in such a way that's digestible and it follows you through. It doesn't feel like a tunnel. It's like, how long is this gonna be? And again, that's the impatience of an audience member, especially the one like myself, which has a lot of other videos to watch and has other things going on, whatever. It's just something to think about, I guess, in that way. I will say the other one compliment I will say, again, on top of the conversation, which was so interesting and really followable, I would say, for the most part, again, aside from those two things that I think could improve it, I also was noticing at one point that like this really can still work as a podcast. As much visual effort you put into the presentation here with the two perspectives and then the way that it's edited with the footage, I was thinking about it and I'm like, yeah, I could very much just like if this is like a podcast, could I not watch any of the video whatsoever and just have it visual audio? And I'm like, I think so, especially if I knew what you're talking about. Especially if I was at the same level that you guys are at with composer and music and things like that. But then that's fine, neither here nor there. That's personal, whatever. But yeah, I really enjoyed the episode. I really liked the format. I think this format's the way to go for sure. Going by a particular episode, I think that was really smart. Yeah, I'd love to see more of this. This is great. Wow, Uniquenameosaurus. I'm pretty sure, I have a feeling that I've at least shouted out his 8-hour version of this video. I don't remember. I actually just noticed that the thumbnail of this one is the like to dislike ratio, I assume, of his 8-hour video, which is honestly like pretty decent, all things considered, and it's surprisingly convincing. But the comments below of this video definitely were like, yeah, this is much better, and I would agree. I remember getting a ways into the 8-hour video, and then it's just like difficult in places. But this really, or I think it organizes it better, because what happens with the 8-hour, if I'm not mistaken, is that there's a couple of the initial defenses of NFTs, and then gets into that major abuse, and then a lot of the receipts and stuff like that, and then it keeps going into the NFT defense, and then that gets to that why. I like that it really this one was more, here's all the defenses, rapid fire, here's the abuse, and here's how artists, like the real crux of the video, I think, is not so much about NFT good. I think it's still a balanced take, all things considered. And this is also coming from a Line Goes Up fan. Look, I have my problems with folding ideas as well. His Aba video is atrocious. But I really like his some of his other videos. And I think Line Goes Up was very interesting and fair, I would say. Not, obviously you have your qualms about it, and I think your disagreements with it make sense. Yeah, and I don't know. I like the craft of both videos. I'd like to think I can be a fan of both, because I could see both sides of it basically. But I think the real value of this video, it reminded me mainly of, it's kind of an extension or continuation of this developing narrative of cancellation that Natalie ContraPoints first talked about, and then Lindsay Ellis also talked about, and then has really acted upon, I would say, more so than Natalie. I think Natalie pretty much kind of recovered from that. Hard to recover, but you know, if you can recover at all. But just like his bounce is on Twitter still, is actively using it still. Whereas Lindsay literally doesn't post on YouTube anymore and is back in a capacity, but only on Nebula. I think that's an interesting contrast and a good difference. And this reminded me of the same idea, where this group of people, these individuals who say one thing and then do another and act in this backstabbing kind of way, which I know, I like that you have this very thorough definition and clear boundaries of what backstabbing is to you, which I also liked. But just the way that they act, and they kind of devour themselves in the way that the right doesn't. You know, it becomes political. If you don't know this video, it very much becomes political. It's like, oh, interesting how that lines up so well. And he's like, please try it yourself. Like, look at it. And it's like, yeah, someone who is terminally online, it was on Twitter. Yeah, all this stuff completely makes sense. And these receipts are there, numerous. And I follow some of these accounts. I actually knew one of them IRL. I won't say which one, but I knew this person in real life years before they became more Twitter known, Twitter famous, in quote unquote. Whatever, neither here nor there. But yeah, gosh, I think the succinctness was really impressive. I appreciated that, because I went back and watched the 8-hour video, and I can tell that the 8-hour video, there's so much content and so much you're sifting through that you don't have the time to re-record certain things or even trim out like little pauses and repeating certain words and the scuffs, like kind of the rough edges of that video. Because it's just the sheer weight that you're dealing with, right? And I get it. But this one was just so much more clear-cut, rapid-fire. You can pause if you want, right? You can, and all of it's in the 8-hour video if you really want like a more thorough thing, and just, you clearly did the research. That's what I always love about your content and your character. You're a trustworthy guy. You're really not like no bullshit. You're not trying to sell a particular narrative. You really want the truth. You know, that's something I always admire, and you're relentless. You are so driven, and yeah, it's just the courage and because you talk about how it's like you will literally get crucified for this sort of opinion. Even being neutral about NFTs makes you a complete target and endangers you, literally endangers you in some of these places. Unbelievable. I think it's a very thorough, it seems to me at least, a very thorough argument. Yeah, really. And I think that the succinctness really worked out. I think the organization was better. But I was going to say, I appreciate that it really seems like it seems re-recorded entirely in that succinct way. I'm like, that was a really good decision. I appreciated that it wasn't just a Cliff Notes condensed version of the 8-hour video. It's the same material. It's the same examples. But it's a lot of taking out a lot of the little narratives and little points that he's like, I didn't even notice that this story had happened. It just so happened to align to my point, or whatever. Things like that. Really trimming the fat in that way. It was really impressive to see. And yeah, really impressive, really good, really tight and impressive to see. I think that hopefully the video speaks for itself in terms of its results and success. I hope it does even better. Yeah, really, really bold and admirable video. That again is really not as much, to me, not as much about NFTs or an argument or defense for it, as much as it is a further indictment and exposure of this incredibly toxic nature that that people have. This is just a human problem that Twitter is facilitating, but it's also all over other platforms, of course. But yeah, it's really interesting. I really appreciate you making it. All right, I took notes on Infinite Show Productions. Mystery of Mama will be in the Criterion Collection. And 3 things off the bat. Unfortunately, this video was uploaded last month and got completely blocked by TNS. Nothing she could do. So she had to re-upload it. And it very seems that the way she did it was chopping the entire video into 4:3 and then adding scan lines over all of it. It seems to have worked. Though, unfortunately, I mean, this is a nitpick, but like very clearly that's what she did, you know? And it's like you couldn't be tailored it a little bit differently in places, or exported the video in 4:3. You know, it's a thing you can do with, or just what you'd have to do is like in like the video software you have, you know, set a new sequence to that aspect ratio so it's exported in that way, and then copy paste all of the timeline that you have from that video over to that one, over to that new sequence, keep the same settings so it doesn't just change it back to 16:9, and then you would have it in 4:3, but then all the stuff was just cropped that way. Nitpick, you didn't have to do that, but you know, I think that would have been nice. Not a big deal though. But except for the end. That's the thing though. That was it for pretty much the entire video, and then at the end with the Patreon thing, which wasn't really because it's all me or Ko-Fi ending card. That one's in 16:9. Okay. Weird, but it's fine. I liked that at the end you did direct to the Discotheque release, which is kind of the definitive version at the moment, and probably has done the best job of releasing it, perhaps including Criterion. Criterion does a decent job with a lot of releases, but who's to say they would do a good job? I think I get that it's less about they would do a better job than Discotheque or something, and it's more that the prestige, the image of their packaging with C and the year and the director with that cover, like yeah, that's cool, and you're not gonna let it go. I like that. Ultimately, for the whole video, I liked it, but it's in parts, and there's parts that I don't like. there's parts that I think were better than others, or things that I like. I feel like that should have just been the video personally. But yeah, I'm gonna go into those because I did take notes. So she does this thing that I feel like I've seen this done a few other times, and it feels like a bit of a cliche, of like a video cliche almost, where it's like, I'm going to describe you 3 hypothetical films, and you think of it, and she gives the 3 hypothetical films. Actually, it's all in one movie. What if I told you that was all one movie? Actually, it was just the first half hour of this one movie, right? It's this thing that she does that I've seen other people do that just really dramatically hyperbolizes the plot of this movie. It's crazy. Yeah, it is kind of crazy, but it's not. The way she's describing it is so hyperbolized, and like these 3 hypothetical films, I was like, I know what you're doing, and I can tell you that that's a very, very thin stretch. Like, yeah, it's kind of that, but it's not really. It's not really. It's very, I don't know. I think it was, and then what she does very soon after that intro, well, she does the whole intro with criteria and everything. But like a little ways into it, the first part is summarizing this movie to get everyone on the same page. And she's like, what better way to do it than to show it to someone who has no attachment to Lupin, right? Doesn't really care if this anime thing isn't desensitized in a way. I believe the quote was, the best way to break down the actual plot of Momo so we're all on the same page of what actually happens in this movie is to walk through it with someone who may not be this film's target audience. And so she explains it to her mom. And that's cute. and it's fun. It leads to some fun banter, right? It's cute and funny. Instead of just watching the movie with her, it's very clear that what they did was take the Blu-ray cover with Blu-ray on the top, the cover of Mamo, sat in front of a computer, the recording, whatever, and Infinite Show Productions describes the movie, summarizes it, plot beat by plot beat to her mom. Instead of, watching the actual movie, I'm not saying like you need to have, it's not a reaction, maybe a different content or something, but like the way that you say the best way to break down the actual plot so we all know what actually happens, and then you proceed to do the same hyperbolizing and summarizing that could be skewed any way you want it to be for some reason. Like the way you describe the movie is going to be different no matter how to the page you are with what actually happens. It's going to be different than how the anime portrays it. It's like your mom actually makes a fair point where at the end of describing this movie, you happen to mention that it was made in 1978, and she's like, wait, whoa, this was made in 1978? Well, that completely changes my perspective on it and my reaction to all of this, because I thought this was made in like 2006 or something, based on she says it's because she saw the Blu-ray thing and the cover, and she just thought it was made in 2006, and that changes her perspective on the movie based on the description. Because if you heard a ridiculous plot of something and you learn that it was kind of made in the year 2022, I think you have a skewed perspective on it than say you were told this was made in the 50s or the 60s, or the 90s. There's a cultural understanding of things, right? Like if you say, oh, this is a Disney original movie, we have a preconception of what Disney original movies are. And so when we describe what this movie is, we're like, oh, yeah, that would be it, yeah, right? Does that make sense? I don't know. So it's like, that changes the perspective. So like, I don't know, maybe if you watched the movie with your mom and then you talked about it, of what you thought of, like, walk you through what happened, and he does this thing, and, it still would have been skewed. Of course. I think in any case, if it actually happens, first of all, I don't think you need any of this, to be honest with you, in the first place. I guess it would have helped a little bit more with grounding your hyperbolizing of it and being like, whoa, this crazy stuff happens. I don't know. But there's one part where they're literally arguing about the plot of the movie, because the way that she describes it, there's a disagreement or something, and they're like, no. And I'm like, why are we doing this? Just watch the movie. I don't know. It was just bothering me, personally. It was just weird. Yeah, but it was just a strange choice for me, I guess. And then there's a kind of a second part after that about the context and the production history of Mamo that also I don't think needed to be there. There was a lot of, like, the first half of this video I feel like didn't need to happen. And I guess it's fine. It wasn't the worst. It wasn't like trash or to cut it, or I don't know. But it was sort of like, I think the actual kind of interesting value part, or the things that really feel additive in this particular instance, was your analysis of the themes and your kind of argument of why Mamo is good and why it's peak fiction, right? Or peak cinema. That's the sort of thing I was expecting with this video, and something I would want, and something I had no notes for. I have nothing to describe of like what, because I really just absorbed what you liked about it. And this is someone who is more of a Cagliostro fan than a Mamo fan. I've seen Mamo twice, and both times it's been kind of like, okay, that was a movie. Okay, And I think you kind of hit that that perspective. I think you kind of acknowledge that as like, yeah, people can have that reaction to it. But this is why I'm weirdly obsessed with it, and I could feel that, and I think that's, and you're saying that it's like, this has been in my brain, and this Lupin is this movie, and my brain is Mamo's brain, and it blew up. Like, that's funny and cute. But the actual, like, talking about the history, of course there's going to be holes. Of course there's going to be like, what? Like little like weird things. And like right away you say Mamo's closest peer would be the AnimeRama trilogy. And then already like, what? Huh? It's from the 69 to 73. There really was nothing between that period and Mamo that could have a closer peer with. If anything, I would actually say a closer peer, if anything. It was interesting you didn't mention Flying Phantom Ship. I wonder if you know about that movie or seen it. Because it is equally, if not more so, batshit as Mamo. And maybe you'd be like, oh, it's more of a kids, broader audience sci-fi. I mean, not really, all things considered, but also, here's the thing, right? Is outside of the Anime Rama trilogy, most of the animated features of the 1970s Japan was fantasy adventure or sci-fi mecha. What the fuck do you call Mamo then? It's fantasy, it's not fantasy? Adventure? Or sci-fi? Huh? Like, what are you talking about, right? It didn't make any sense to me. It was just I don't know why this argument's being made. Because then you just move on to like, oh, well, it's the first they used Animavision or something. My throat is incredibly strained now. VistaVision and oversized cells. And it's like, okay, where are you going with that other point? Like, why does it matter that the first contemporary... Is that trying to say that it was such a unique, different, like, bold thing of animation? Like, you're just gonna kind of ignore, like, all the others? I don't know. Granted, it's like, I get it. The 70s does not have much in the way of movies, just by sheer quantity. There really wasn't much that came out that decade for movies. Because, yeah, like, the vast majority is being focused on television. And then, just the general quantity of stuff that is low in that period, but it's fine, whatever. But yeah, that was just a strange point to make. And then there's a point where you mention Yamato, the film, and it's very dismissive, because you were just like, you're also dismissive of Anime Rama, I would say, too. Kind of call the other two, the first two, juvenile, because like has the Astro Boy cutaway in Cleopatra, like, okay. And then like Belladonna is just a glorified slideshow. All right, yeah, thank you. Just like, I don't know. You don't have to put those movies down like that. But then you get to Yamato. Yeah, it's just like very dismissive, because you were saying like before Mamo, the most expensive movie was Yamato, which doesn't make sense because it was a compilation movie. But it outgrossed Star Wars, so I guess the 8 people ate that shit up. Completely dismiss like the cultural impact of Yamato, but also apparently I asked some Discord mutuals in a server I'm in about this claim about like, why is it so expensive when it's a compilation movie? Did they do something like Gundam where a lot of it was new animation? I didn't want to go out and fucking check myself, really. I couldn't find any sources that were talking much about it besides saying, oh, recap movie. Because obviously people can hand wave that, but they won't really notice all the actual detail. And apparently it's like, yeah, for the most part, they don't really add anything. They really didn't really add much, the way that Gundam is like 70% new footage for the third movie. Stuff, it wasn't that drastic, really. So we're not really sure why it cost that much. But it turns out the outgrossed Star Wars thing probably isn't even true. Like, you look at the actual gross for the Japanese domestic gross for Star Wars, and then looking at the Japanese gross for, Saraba Yamato, or even the original Yamato, which seems very like, wait, what even was it? We don't even know for sure, because it's the exact same number as Saraba Yamato. Like, what? It's a myth. You hear that of like, oh, it outgrows Star Wars, wow, and it's probably not even true. Is it even fucking true? Like, what? Anyway, but that didn't even matter, because it just kind of moves on to VistaVision and all those other things. That it's like, okay, I don't know where that was going. This was weird. She's saying that people tend to associate Mamo with its supervisor, Yasuo Otsuka, instead of the director and screenwriter, Soji Yoshikawa. Except, I mean, who does associate this with Otsuka so much? I've really heard more about the connections with Yuzo Aoki as one of the animation directors. And then saying Soji did also she doesn't seem to mention that Soji is credited for the character design and storyboarding. Like, he has a really significant hand in this movie. And it's like, how would anyone confuse Otsuka as like the guy behind it? Especially, I think there was a quote where I remember looking into this later, and he's like, yeah, I did like 80%. I not like 80%. He did like, Otsuka was entered the production when it was about 80% done, because he was working on Conan at the time. He was working on fucking Future Boy Conan. Like, of course he's not working on Mamo. Like, what? That was weird. I don't know. And then again, it's like, I guess it's just to credit more for Soji Yoshikawa, but it's like, what? I don't know. Fucking tries to guess. It's just like, here's, Yamato and Cagliostro side by side. Try to guess which one is more expensive. Come on, don't do that. Don't do that. Doesn't fucking matter. And again, it's like, what is that? What is even that point? Like, what do you? I didn't see why you were bringing that up. It also doesn't mention the fact that Mamo was made in 15 months versus Cagliostro being made in 7 months. So you think about like the amount of money spread amounts the amount of time in production. What's the more expensive movie? Does it matter? It's like this the amount by the end of the day. It's still the amount. Like, sure, this is ultimately still the more expensive movie, but I mean, you think of the amount, the cost per length and everything to distribute it and stuff. Maybe it just doesn't matter because it's also the same material at the end of the day. I'm not sure, but I feel like there should be something to be said about the length of time that was made. Both of them were made. That makes it interesting. I don't know. I really do admire and appreciate her analysis of limited animation in Mystery of Mamo. I describing the different techniques and the lighting and certain things like that. And it's like, yeah, hell yeah. But it was just weird that she just completely ignores that all of that evolution and like that progress was being done in TV animation at that time. She doesn't mention TV anime at all. Not even like the series or anything, just felt very singular in that way. And it's like, I don't know. It's sort of giving Mamo too much credit, in my opinion. Where it's like, I mean, it is kind of cool that, but then again, Belladonna of Sadness is like still the king of limited animation, if you all things considered, right? I don't know. It's weird. It was just weird to me. It was just like, okay, I like it, but yeah, I don't know what you would say. Even it was just like, oh yeah, it was even it was one of the line of like, pioneered or like actually pushed forward by Japan's emphasis that decade of limited animation compared to full animation that Toei was doing. Whatever. I don't know what you would say there. Look, there's a transition into part 2 and part 3 of like really explaining why she is obsessed with this movie and why she's really making the case for it. And the lead up to that and the kind of the fucking hole with me part 3 big splashy thing. Very dramatic. It's something that I would probably do in some of my videos. So I can't wholly dismiss it or say cringe necessarily. I would just say that the premise or like the way you were like, oh, you thought we were in the hole? Oh, we're not even in the boundary of the hole. Like, I don't know, the build up or the where it's coming from didn't land with me, and I didn't expect the build up, and it just became so intense that like it was like and it kind of missed me. Like, it was like this really cool emotional beat that I was like over here for. I was like, wait, what? I don't know what it, and I didn't really try to go back and like rewind of like try to hit that again, because do you really do that with movies? Do you do that with other like types of media where I'm like, oh, that emotional beat didn't hit for me. Let me rewind like 30 seconds and see if it hits for me now. It kind of doesn't work that way. Maybe I'm being too harsh or whatever. But again, pretty much no notes after that. I actually really liked the rest of it. The list of themes and like certain things like that. There was one that I did take a note on though, about one of the themes. And again, it's about the animation and like the production stuff that I'm, you know, a little bit more familiar with, that the idea. And it was more of that wasn't like I was disagreeing so much as I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. Like, I'm just trying to decipher what you mean, basically. Let me read this out. So basically the theme is the mystery of Mamo is about the state of animation in the 70s. Basically, Lupin's rejection of Mamo's obsession, this is my interpretation, like trying to decipher your points and not just quoting entirely verbatim. Basically, in the movie, Lupin's rejection of Mamo's obsession with historical relevance and something that lasts for centuries, right? He's like, I was there for the Mona Lisa or whatever. You know, his obsession with that. And then Lupin just kind of like being dismissive, like, it doesn't fucking matter. And just kind of rejecting that vibe from Mamo, basically. That has a thematic tie with the film's rejection of distinguished full animation in favor of limited animation, which is attributed to Miyazaki and Takahata, and as you say, Ralph Bakshi and Don Bluth. I don't know why you're bringing up Don Bluth when like this movie came out when it came out before Don Bluth's movies. Weird. Why would it be? How could it be a commentary of movies that came out after it? But okay. Even though, and also, apparently, what you said earlier, right? Otsuka is more associated with this movie than Soji. I'm sorry if I keep calling him Soji. Soji Yoshikawa. It's apparently more associated with Otsuka, even though Otsuka is like the one that fostered Miyazaki and Takahata into like being more interested in full animation. Like Otsuka's the guy, you know, and he's done both. He was a master, regardless, just a master. But like he's the guy. He's animating this incredible full animation fish scene in Horace. Like he's the guy. It's weird. There was a conflict where it's like, do you really get this full animation thing? And I can't say that I haven't indulged in this interesting rivalry or dichotomy between full animation and limited animation. In fact, I quite like it. I think it's fascinating. But it was just very clearly biased for the sake of Mamo. I think the way you were framing it, there was something that was just like, you verily have a horse in this race. It's just anything you can find to validate Mamo as a valuable piece of media. It's just be like, oh, it's the rejection of full animation and pesky Miyazaki and Takahata, and showing a clip of Panda Co Panda. Really? First of all, don't slander Panda Co Panda. That film is gas. That film is gas. But also, that particular movie as well, like Panda Co Panda, that's not like, it's got animation for sure. Like it's a gorgeous movie, but it's also like, it's got a good balance of, it's not all on ones. Let's just say that, you know, it's not like it's technical masterpiece or something. Still gorgeous movie, still very gas. It's also just weird that like Mamo would be a commentary on Miyazaki's perspective when Miyazaki hadn't made Cagliostro yet. Like, so is Mamo just commenting on part 2? Conan? Like part 1? What? What is it trying to like, haha, we got, take that, Horus of the Sun? Like, is it that? Like, what? Huh? Again, not Panda Co Panda. That shit's gas. Maybe Heidi? What? Do you know what I mean? It was just like, I like the more than the next guy, but it was just sort of weird. And like the argument that she's making, that like full animation, this Miyazaki Takahata perspective is saying that tradition equaled artistic purity. Like they believe that. Did you get that from Starting Point or something? Where's the quote? What are you talking about? Who is saying that? You? But then this is an actual quote. So I put this in quote, like I grabbed this quote just because I I cannot decipher it. This was the indecipherable part. And this is the thing she ends on. So I'm just like, what was that? Mamo predicted, perhaps correctly, that once accumulated cultural wealth finally proved worthless, the industry would cut its losses, torch the whole thing, and move on to the next big money pit. That one might be a stretch, but fuck you, I'm keeping it in. A stretch? I don't even know what it's stretching. What are you talking about? Predicted, perhaps correctly, that once accumulated cultural wealth finally proved worthless, so that, like, so in this case, full animation accumulating full animation finally proved worthless. When, how, why? The industry would cut its losses. Oh, it's like, oh, this full animation would cut its losses, torch the whole thing, and move on to the next big money. Are you referring to how, like, I don't know, maybe an example, Toei was doing full animation, and then once Astro Boy came out with limited animation, they just kind of ditched those those feature-length movies and just did that instead. Like, that could be what you're talking about, I think. But it didn't predict it. That happened a decade before. It predicted more than a decade before. That happened. What is Mamo predicting correctly? That happens after Mamo. That, like, oh, once it... Are you referring to how, like, once Cagliostro was made and full animation, it had full animation, even though not really. It's still kind of a conventionally animated movie, all things considered. It's just, Miyazaki. Like, once that was made, the industry would just abandon Mamo or something? Is that what you're trying to say? Say it then. I don't know what you're saying. It just ends like that. Well, fuck you, I'm keeping it in. I'm like, well, what? What was it? What? I just don't understand. And then, yeah, I really like the personal metatextual kind of conclusion about, and like, oh, you never know. Maybe I'm crazy. Maybe I'm the only one. And I don't know, again, the resolution is good. I like when you talk about Lupin. And, yeah. And I think in general, I think the craft is decent. Like showing the good things, the good mic enthusiastic, delivery of it, and punchy kind of script. It's good. And I'm sorry your video got kneecapped like that. It sucks. I'm hoping this re-upload does better. But yeah, I mean, I was more mixed on this video than I was expecting, because I loved your first video. Like, the video was like wonderful, I think. The first one. But this one was like, that one's a little more rockier. I would say there's certain things it's like I could have been better in places, but yeah, still enjoyed. I watched it, and hope the best for it. Clear and sweet with the first Sailor Moon iceberg video, and the first iceberg video I ever watched in full. I'm pretty sure. It's a very viral trend. It seems to be doing well for it for Clear and Sweet too. Very well. Sheesh. These damn iceberg videos, man. That's something else. You just like catnip. So it was my first experience with these vids, so I don't know if there's a trend or kind of a norm, right? I would say it makes sense. Makes sense that there's the standard template is the original pictured iceberg, right? And all the things, and then you really go point by point and explaining each one. And just the context of it is like, that's referring to this incident in this episode or in this particular moment, and or that's referring to this or this other thing, explaining that sort of thing. Not giving your opinion so much, but just immersing you more in the culture of Sailor Moon. At least a lot of it seems in the Western perspective, I guess. At least it seemed a good chunk of it, at least. I would have said my one note about this, because it's like I watched it kind of a while ago when it came out, 6 days ago, I guess. It's not that while ago, I guess. Whatever. But one thing I would say that I would think would have helped me is, I mean, the timeline makes I like that you broke it on the TL with the TL, Jesus. The time codes, giving the different levels and stuff. But I guess the format, it naturally led to just, you gave one shot, you gave us one image of what the iceberg, here's the example iceberg I'm using, but I didn't really take any time to pause or look through it or read it or anything. So I just kind of let the video go. And in that way, it ended up just like feeling like a very random list. Obviously, it's in different categories, and the art are kind of arbitrary, where there's some things that are more obvious or less or more obscure or whatever. I wasn't so much about I wasn't really, that's a completely subjective thing of like what's obscure and what's not. All of this is new information to me, pretty much all of it. So it didn't matter to me in that regard. But I think it would have helped, or somehow, if you showed this section, maybe at the beginning when you go like, here's the title of, now we're in this level of the iceberg. If you showed that image, that chunk of the iceberg with those names and stuff, and maybe that would encourage me to do a little more of like looking at them first and be like, oh, what is that one? What is that one? So give me a sense of curiosity. Or I don't know exactly how you would do this visually in the video, but maybe even having the level of iceberg on screen the whole time that you're referring to. And then, like, you know, obviously what's on screen is on screen, but the audience can maybe potentially kind of peruse down and, oh, what is that one going to do? What one's that one going to be? You know, and you get to that one and you're following it, you know, and here's all of them, you know, and you're kind of checking them off. Or, I don't know, something like that. I feel like it was just little things that could make it feel less like, I was going to say slog, but it's not a slog. I enjoyed the whole video. It just felt like a parade of facts. It was just a list, you know, and it didn't feel like it was any order because I was not alluded to that. I was not akin to that. I mean, I could have had the PNG of the iceberg on a second screen or something, and it could have followed with you there. Okay, I guess that's extra. You didn't really say that in the video. I don't know. Like, that's a play, but like, I don't know, something that feels a little bit more followable, increases curiosity, something like that. Not just one note, but like hard to, you know, really be nitpicky in this kind of video, which is very largely very thorough. I like the occasional personal perspective from you, and yeah, I like the video a good deal. It was very comfy and fun and interesting. It's a good primer as well for me who is about to watch Sailor Moon this year. Not fully thanks to this video, but more so, it was just time. I finished Naruto last year. This year it was One Piece. I'm pretty much caught up. I'm not fully caught up because, well, I didn't want to catch up in the middle of Wano and watch Wano week to week. So, you know, so I'm just kind of waiting for Wano to be done. Or at least get to a very certain part, which should be happening in a few months, and then catch up in time for that or something. I don't know. Just but yeah. Yeah, I enjoyed the video though. It was really good. At last. And here we are. End of the year. So pretty much the entire year working on this video. All 12 months, basically. Not all 12, but like, you know, towards the beginning of the whatever. Hideaki Auto Problem by STEVEM. 3 goddamn hours. Several completely, you know, standalone videos in this, really. That could just be function as their own thing, you know. On that grand outline is sort of just an overview of Hideaki Anno's career. Very thorough. Perhaps now I want to say off the bat, I won't say the individuals of the server I'm in or whatever. I don't even know if they really watch Digest. They weren't as warm to the video, I think, because, you know, it's just the facts, and, you know, it could be it could whatever. And I was like, you know, that's cool. I think that's more constructive than just glowing praise that you've probably gotten 95% of, I would assume. It's just like, this is the best Naruto video, blah, 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 and I could sing its praises for days. I would do the same thing, but I think I appreciated that perspective because it does allow me to keep my expectations realistic, or in a way that's like functional. I'm not functional. Constructive. Not, and I don't have anything negative to say. I really don't. I didn't take any notes. I'm not even picking it apart really. I would say my favorite parts was definitely the Evangelion TV series plus the End of Evangelion sections. End of Eva specifically because I really liked your a brief kind of introspective moment with you with your creative process with this video. And it comes back around a little bit also with when bringing up the rebuilds. And then I also really appreciated the obviously the Karakano section because that's new information and got this thing translated and it's all correct stuff because there's so much misinformation about that particular show for whatever reason. But what really stuck out to me was just the I was really excited to get to that latter half of the video, which nobody covers. People have obviously talked about Eva. They've talked about Karakano a fair deal. They've even talked about Nadia, Gunbuster, and Daikon stuff. All of his anime work, right? But Love and Pop, I know Goat Jesus covered it once, and that's kind of it. I think one other person might have, but not really. And I don't think anyone's ever covered his, what the heck was that name of the film? I don't even remember. Ritual. Like, no, didn't even heard of Ritual. And I'm so appreciative that you actually spent the time on those major projects that are really important to his career, you know, emotionally and like creatively. And as well as Cutie Honey stuff. That whole section is great. So there's that old stuff that's so valuable. And of course, the greater focus on production for the rebuilds in particular, that stuff was always very interesting, as well as Shin Gojira as well. And it's a shame that, like, I would say they were like, the people were the people I was talking with, I don't want to like speak for them mostly, but they were saying stuff of just like, you know, what is the problem? Like, what's this title? What's the thesis of this video? And as someone who's followed your you know, and me was talking about it, and I just know it's a naming convention. That's why you called the cone video and everything. And it's just a naming convention, really. And so the actual problem, I don't think, was as clear in this one. But then beyond that, yeah, there really isn't much in the way of a thesis in the same way. It really just kind of starts, and here's the guy, and we're going to go through his whole career. And I don't think you need a thesis for that. I think it's very clear to the audience that's what you're doing. You know? Maybe the layman doesn't get it, but right? But I think it's very followable in that way. And then there's other things of just like, you know, a very stronger focus on other aspects like Gynax, and in that way it doesn't go deep enough, or potentially. But like, I don't mind that. I think what there is all valuable information, and it makes sense the amount that you go into it, I would say. And I think the approach you have here worked for me, even with the information that I had, you know, even from before while talking about it or my own research and whatever. I think it was a lot of really good stuff here, and I liked how for the most part it's dispassionate, but it's not fully dispassionate. There is stuff that you're introducing your own little analysis of it, or personal thoughts about it, and things like that. And then yeah, it's hard to add much to your general polish here, with the really fair balance, and nothing felt too much leaning on your on-screen performance or using the drawings you have or general anime footage. It was all very well balanced in that way. For such it doesn't feel like a 3-hour video in that regard. But like, I would say that audio-wise, there was something weird with, like, I don't know, it wasn't that there was like difference that you could tell there was different recording days or something, but it was just there's some bits of audio that were very clear, and there's other bits that were still clear, but like definitely had a bit of noise to them or had something different done to the audio or something. I don't know quite what it was. It was distracting in a way. It did like stick out. It wasn't a deal breaker, but it was just something I was kind of noticing. Of course, the animation that you've done, and I really appreciate that it's the first thing you put up as the intro of this is animated by you, is really great, and the amount of work you did in those animations is impressive. I would hope people don't take that too much for granted, and saying it's not a good video for whatever this and that, of like not emphasizing one part or the other. But like, yeah, it's an impressive feat. I just, I guess I didn't want to be as glowing with it. I just want to have more reverence, I think, because it's something that's just like took so much out of you, took so much effort, and not to mention you had other videos that came out, right? And it's just incredibly success. I'm happy to see the success. I'm happy to see it pushed you over 100K. God, that was such a long time coming, and you didn't even like compared to like Bennett or something, right? Or other people, but like I think Categoris like just recently got to 1 million or whatever, and but like 100K, I'm so happy you got it. You're more than deserving of it, and so it's but then fucking you did it, man. The thing is just like, oh god, you put me over it. It's just the 100 greatest anime movies. I also watched that. Another 2 hours of that. I don't want to talk about it too much because I'm not like putting on digest per se, but like because I would only do like one per creator type of thing. And obviously I'm putting this fucking massive thing instead of that. It'd be funny. No, but like that was really cool too. And I like the approach of being more unscripted and a little more looser, but still polished and still like actually had footage to it and engaging all the way through. Anyway, yeah, really impressive stuff. I'm very humbled by it. We'll say that, I guess. But yeah, I'm also appreciative of being involved with it too, lending a couple of my voice to it with certain things. Thank you for sharing that experience with having me share in this experience in whatever little way I had. That was really nice. Happy to. And yeah, really impressive. It is gonna, yeah, I can understand people being like, oh, let's not praise it too much because he only did this much, and we're just like, no, that's still a lot of work. It's still 3 effing hours. He actually covered the stuff that doesn't get talked about that much, on top of the craft itself is so over the board, like over the top, like not like but like great. And not to mention the fucking 200 plus sources, like all that shit, unbelievable. You just gotta, you kind of have to give him props no matter what you might think of it. I'm not saying it's like de facto, but it kind of it's like you get, oh my god, unreal. I don't know how well that went. I hope that was encouraging, or at least interesting, constructive, or something. I don't know, but yeah, congrats and real nice job. Hope you're to have a nice what little recovery you got, and then do something. I guess you have other stuff coming out. Jeez, oh my god. Well, that'll do it for that installment of AniTube Digest, and the last one for the year. Unfortunately, I'm not going to do a yearly thing. I'm not too up for it. I'd rather move on to something else. But I'm sorry. But I hope you enjoyed this installment, and yeah, you guys have a great month. Have a great year. 2023. Here we go, baby. I'll be better than this year. Yo, peace.